Welcome, everyone, to the Wednesday edition of Jim's Weekly Rankings. We're going through position players, some of the key guys that I think could be rised up, or at least Jim could, that will help you for your fantasy laps this week. And again, talk about the quarterback position with guys like C.J. Stroud and Brock Purdy, and to a lesser extent, some of the quarterbacks 15 and later, like Kirk Cousins, for example, haven't produced the way you're hoping for, but they haven't been dramatic drop-offs from a safety perspective. And a guy that I think does fit that answer is Jared Goff, who I recommended on the Tuesday Waiver Wire podcast, could probably be cut. Plays technically the hardest team against fantasy quarterbacks this week, Seahawks, Monday Night Football, then on a bye week. If you needed to find another quarterback you want to dive into the Andy Dalton, Sam Darnold waters, you could maybe consider it. But where do you have Jared Goff on your rankings this week?
Yeah, I probably have Jared Goff higher than many people have. I have Jared Goff as my quarterback 15. I'm not recommending him as a starter in a 12-team league. So that's the main point. He's a backup this week. But what we're seeing across the NFL, this has to preface the show, and this references Goff. It references a lot of other players as well. The game of the NFL is a chess match. It's constantly evolving. What we're seeing this year is the defenses have made some beautiful adjustments. Last year and before, we started seeing what we call simulated pressures. You don't know where the pressure is coming from. They get sent from weird places. But we've also seen, we hear all about this two high safeties, where the two safeties play high to limit plays. But the defenses are now more hiding their pre-snap movement until the snap. So only a few teams are doing that in the past. Quarterbacks are more confused than ever. It's going to be a bit of a process here. What I will say for Jared Goff is that, and their center is probably, if Frank Ragnow is injured, he probably is going to miss the game. But their offensive line is very good. And whatever Seattle throws at them pass rush-wise, they've been very good. The Goff should be kept clean here. Now, I'm on Ross St. Brown's matchup when Devon Witherspoon's in the slot. I don't like that, but I do think you could get Jameson Williams' speed going, because their outside corners are bigger guys, they're more physical guys. If they get Williams going, and also those corners aren't good tacklers, if you could get Jameson Williams going, it could unlock some things. But like I said, I agree with you. He's not a fantasy starter. I do believe that Ben Johnson will get the offense turned around, but it's going to take Goff and a lot of quarterbacks in the league some time to figure out how to navigate these defenses.
Yeah, you'd think some of the veteran quarterbacks, especially like Jared Goff, who's been around a long time and I think seen a lot of things, would be able to like navigate that scenario better, where the defenses are presenting things like, look like the Aaron Rodgers of the world, even Kirk Cousins. I thought I saw a lot Sunday night against the Chiefs. The way you're doing the count would necessitate by like 7 or 8 left on the clock. You are then making the defense have to show, or they're going to be out of position on the play call. Like that's what the really smart veterans do. But I mean, like Jared Goff has had limitations with that stuff. It's why that Rams-Patriots game, Bill Belichick confused them the way they did. Like that's just because Goff's a veteran doesn't necessarily mean that he's able to respond that way. And I think Ben Johnson has masked that, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, right, to a certain degree. We saw it last year too. The other part, and why I would recommend dropping Jared Goff. I would then pick him up week 5 after the bye week is done, but I recommended dropping him on the Tuesday podcast was because the Lions have really found the identity, that running attack that with Jahmyr Gibbs, I should say, and David Montgomery, they're relying heavily, and rightfully so. We have no idea what the stats for Sam Laporta will become Monday too, which I know he hasn't been a fantasy factor, but is a piece of that offense that matters and will help Jared Goff be better. So I would agree with you. He's outside my top 12, and I would be fine if you're in a shallow league trying to find other quarterback options this week and dropping Jared Goff as a result. We had talked about Derek Carr last week. He's been terrorizing fantasy managers. I will blame Harry Thompson, really stud fantasy guy here, but also our major tech guy, for starting Derek Carr, and that's why Derek Carr struggled last week against the Eagles. But now you have the Eagles defense, who did keep Derek Carr in the Saints office in check for the first time all season. Going against the Buccaneers, you would assume Baker Mayfield probably isn't to play, but I have a feeling you have a bit higher in your rankings.
Derek Carr.
Well, I'm at Baker Mayfield. I want to talk about Baker Mayfield. Yeah.
Okay. So Baker Mayfield, yeah, look, Philadelphia, I'm going to give Vic Fangio a lot of credit last week with the Derek Carr thing. A couple of things happened here. So first of all, let's just preface that to get to Mayfield. So what happened was Fangio came up playing 6 man fronts, which is unheard of in today's NFL, because he realized the Saints were using outside zone run, and they were using that outside zone run to leverage play action to give Carr a lot of time. Fangio painted a masterpiece, and we already know Fangio can put a shell over the top. That's his specialty. So he did two things that neutered Derek Carr in that game. Alvin Kamara had a good fantasy day, but it was all on volume. It was not a good day. So I'm going to give Fangio the credit there. But now Baker Mayfield comes in. Realistically, the problem is you've got those receivers. And look, the Eagles do not have a good pass rush. They got some things going. Interior, oh my gosh, the interior.
Jalen Carter.
Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter was doing some damage, but that was it. They really don't have a good pass rush. And Baker Mayfield has his left tackle's healthy. His right tackle, Luka Decky's missed 2 weeks with a concussion. It would be nice to get him back. Not sure what his status is. But that said, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have a massive mismatch on this defense, and that's where it all starts. And the way Godwin's been schemed up, using him interior, that is the worst spot of the Eagles defense together. Now, here's the thing. Mike Evans, we heard the head coach say, I want Evans more involved. So that's a squeaky wheel coming from a head coach, not the player. So I do think you're going to also see Evans get a little more run in this game. But the best matchup is Godwin. I think Mayfield has time here. And when Mayfield has time, they can't run the ball. We already know they cannot run the ball. Bucky Irving's a little better than Rachaad White as a runner, but they're going to throw. And I do think Baker Mayfield, last week it was bad for him against Denver. Denver has a sneaky good pass rush, and they were in the backfield all day long. Well, Philly doesn't have that. And that's the big difference why I have Baker Mayfield at quarterback 9.
7 sacks for the Broncos, and Patrick Surtain, who I think still is the best cornerback in the league, isn't being talked about that way, locking things down for the Broncos defense. In an upset win, of course, ruined my survivor week. I made it far more than most people, week 3, but still, nevertheless, for that Broncos team. I'm not sure I have Baker 8. You know, like the other guys around that range on your rankings. Well, you have 9. I'm sorry, Baker 9. Mahomes. So you're saying you would start Baker over Patrick Mahomes? I mean, that's another conversation entirely.
Real quick, though, Mahomes is a quarterback, too. I put him in 10 out of respect. I can't put him lower than that. This goes to the second half of last year. He was a quarterback 2 in the second half of last season. Through 3 weeks this season, he's a quarterback 2. He is not a quarterback 1. His yards per attempt last year was 7. It was a career low by a full yard. He's in the 4s this year. I mean, that's half of his yards per attempt. They have nothing. They have Rashee Rice and nothing. Travis Kelce, I don't know what the deal is. Nothing there. Who else do they have? They have nothing else. They're going to try to run the ball. And look, against the Chargers, Chargers been playing good defense. They're not going to air it out to be a low-scoring game. The Chiefs should be able to win a low-scoring game. This could be like a 19-13 deal. So they're not scoring points, Joe. I'm glad you brought it up because I think it's important to talk about.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Now, the Chargers want to win the game by slowing the tempo down. Like I think the Chiefs are favored by 7 or something close to that, because I'm filling out my gambling article this week. And my thought was, I don't know if the Chargers are really good. The first 2 weeks, they didn't play anybody, not actual real NFL teams, and then got shellacked by the Steelers, who knew what to do. But the Steelers defense has been shellacking everybody this year. I mean, think back to that week 1 game against the Falcons. That's what the Steelers defense has done. I don't know if I want to overreact to a certain extent, but I know the Chargers want to win by making sure J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards did not get any run last week, which was a little bit weird against the Steelers, but those two are going to touch the ball 30 times, maybe even more if Justin Herbert is severely hampered, which you'd assume he would be after aggravating the high ankle sprain against the Steelers. So if the Chargers are going to run, and then run some more, the Chiefs might only get an opportunity. Like what's their total points scored? Do you know for this week, or like what's the accounted for? Like if it's anything higher than 17, I would be a little bit surprised, because that's the game script the Chargers want, and the Chiefs might just lean into it too. So you're right. Mahomes probably is on the outside of the quarterback 1 conversation, just out of respect. I think that's totally fair. So again, make Baker Mayfield 9, Patrick Mahomes 10, and then you have Jordan Love listed as 11. Is that due to your concerns with the knee, or if he's going to play? Like if we knew today Love was going to play, is his ranking different than 11?
Minnesota, Brian Flores. I mean, last year he just threw whatever he could there. He blitz because they had no talent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they quietly brought in pieces that fit what he wants to do. That defense is not a joke because Brian Flores is a mastermind. And I talked at the top of the show about this whole idea of how the defenses are really confusing offenses. Brian Flores at the forefront of this, and we can't ignore that at all. And he is confusing teams. Now, Matt LaFleur, obviously a great coach in his own right, but Love is going to be limited if he plays. He's not going to have full mobility for rollouts if they need him on those. My guess is that's going to be a problem. So he might just be more of a drop back passer, which is fine. But all that said, there's going to be pressure coming from all over, and escapability is going to be a problem here. And doesn't always get home for Minnesota, the pressure, but again, it comes from the most inopportune places. And when you have a quarterback whose knee is probably a bit unstable, I'm a little bit concerned about it. So I'm a little lower on the rankings. I don't think he's 100%. And I think that means something.
I think I would play Love over Mahomes, given the scenario we outlined with that Chargers-Chiefs game. And Baker, it's tough. Baker versus Jordan Love, you think about preseason ADP, no one would ever consider doing that. But if we're thinking this like a best ball, like just 1 week, who will score more points? I kind of agree. Like the Eagles secondary, we talked about the pass rush not being good. The Eagles secondary is old and bad. And Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, I think, could exploit that. So I'm with you among those. These are all like low-end quarterback ones in a 12-team league. So maybe we shouldn't be spending so much time. But like the obvious ones, both Kyler Murray, Jaden Daniels are easily in the top 6 because of the rushing aspect. Same goes for Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. If you have a rushing quarterback, you are winning. Except Justin Fields. Like, how should we feel about Justin Fields this week and moving forward? Because that's the one part of this rushing equation for that fantasy position that I don't know if I have an answer to.
It's funny. In 2 quarterback leagues, there were people who were making the sharp move when Russell Wilson was a starter and picking up Fields super late in draft, thinking, if he's a starter, I got a league winner. Well, he's the starter in week 1, and guess what? You got a winning quarterback, but he's not far from a league winner.
He's not running,
right? So he's just not running for a lot. And, I don't know. I think it's the way that defenses have to approach Pittsburgh. They know Arthur Smith's the coach. They know some general things to look for. They're not worried about the passing game. They're not, because the quarterback is not going to likely beat you consistently. George Pickens is an issue, but there's nobody else a defense is worried about. So defenses could really approach the Steelers team differently. I mean, Fields in the opener, 14 carries for 57 yards. We were good with that. But then 8 carries for 27 against Denver, and then 6 carries for 6 yards. He found the end zone last week. The passing numbers are nothing to shake about. He's not even averaging 200 yards per game. So there's a real issue with that. So right now, Fields is, he's a 2 quarterback league option, super flex option, but there is very, very little upside here. Could he break an 80-yard run 1 week that we didn't see coming? Yes, he certainly can, but it's not going to be something I'm going to bank on.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want to get to this question. Thanks, Cam, for chipping in here for our station. He lists his roster, which I can get to in a second, but the crux of the question is, would you trade CeeDee Lamb and Najee Harris for Garrett Wilson and Josh Jacobs? Now, the idea would be maybe you're trading Najee Harris away and Garrett Wilson away to like improve the better half of your running back rotation. He's got Bijan, and Josh Jacobs would probably start over Rashad White. But giving up CeeDee Lamb, just real quick, RotoWire.com/try gets you 48-hour access to the site. I say that because we have a tool on the site where it's a positional rest of season schedule, rankings of things. The Cowboys are listed number 1. Like the most receivers that you want to acquire, the passing attack you want to acquire rest of season right now, based off our projections, is the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb. So my thought is you're giving up the best player in CeeDee Lamb, and that's one of the better situations you can project out the rest of the season. I don't know if I'd want to, even to improve my second running back spot.
I think wide receivers, in my mind, are still more stable than running backs. They tend to not get as many season-ending injuries. They tend, in my mind, not to get as hurt as often. So in that case, you're getting Josh Jacobs who could carry your rushing attack. But again, the more usage a running back gets, we always worry. But CeeDee Lamb, I mean, the receivers, they don't tend to get these long scale injuries. Garrett Wilson, look, I love him as a player. Think he's a superstar. Right now, we're not seeing that. Yeah. And we're seeing Aaron Rodgers spreading the ball around because that's what's available to him. And it's probably going to keep working. And Breece Hall is going to be a massive part of this offense. Dallas hasn't gotten Lamb targets yet, and that's a problem. They're going to have no choice but to fix that because I think they understand through 3 weeks our defense is trash, and the only way we win is doing what we did last year, which was throw the tar out of the ball. So I like the CD Lamb side of this. Najee, look, Jaylen Warren hurt in the beginning of the season, hurt again, not quite sure. This just looks like that, that speedy back that's just getting dinged up. The writing's on the wall. So one of those seasons. Najee's going to have a floor and he's going to have volume. I just think CD could still blow up your league. So I'm gonna lean toward the CD and Najee side of this, like Joe is.
I would try to counter, because I think this is a close deal. Like I like CD more, especially rest of the season, that matters. If I was to replace CD Lamb with AJ Brown, who I know you're high on entering this year, and maybe somebody's worried that he won't play right away, AJ Brown and Najee Harris for Garrett Wilson and Josh Jacobs, like that one seems more fair to me, right?
Yeah, I would think so. AJ Brown should be fine after the bye week. I imagine they sit him here, get him a full 2 weeks, which is really going to get with the bye week. 13 days till the next game. So I think he's fine. But like I said, I think that would be a little bit better because CD Lamb that volume is going to be there. The defense is trash. So I think we can counter. So I like that idea of countering it in that case.
The other way I'd do this, again, I'm just giving Cam credit for the question asking here. Remove CD Lamb, maybe throw Amari Cooper and Rashad White in to see if I could get Garrett Wilson, or even like a George Pickens or something like that. If that's like putting the Rashad White above Najee Harris might be some value. That'll be one of the few players I feel confident saying I want to sell right now is Rashad Wright. So thanks again, Cam, for the question. And just reminded folks, because we had somebody like KJ asking a start sit. You do like a 15-hour marathon on Sunday mornings. I know you literally can't do that, but you are on basically all day Sunday morning, either on SiriusXM or on the RotoWire YouTube channel where you're watching this video live. Obviously, it'd be great if you can give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you can. But more importantly, Jim has got you covered with all these start-sit-based matchups. Hopefully, it will help my stake league at some point. I just need to chime in and ask a question because I've been miserable in making those calls. But Jim is great at that. Gives you a full 2 hours as long as he can, at least on Sunday morning, to get you set. So our YouTube channel, RotoWire YouTube, where you're watching right now, if you can give it a like for this video or any of Jim's content on Sundays, that would be fantastic. So let's transition to that running back position and get a few of those out there. I have been low on Kyren Williams entering the year. I thought the two obvious pitfalls of ADPs, and this is direct quote from me, was Devon Achane, Kyren Williams. What you see on my face is not goodness, but also egg, because I clearly am wrong. There's been a lot of egg in my face the first 3 weeks of the season. I really think Kyren Williams is due for some sort of downfall given the yards per carry, but he keeps getting touchdowns, and volume is king. You have said that. That is your quote that I'm attributing to you, Jim.
Yes.
It's Jim Coventry, expert fantasy analyst. Volume is king. That is what matters. So where do you have Kyren Williams ranked this week?
Oh my gosh, so funny you said it because that is completely, I was just loading it up. I had that line, volume is king in fantasy football already. You got me perfect on that, Joe. Yeah, so look, that's it. He's Rashad White. Kyren Williams is Rashad White. He is going to get carries. Rashad White of last year, not of this year.
Right.
He's going to get carries. He's going to get targets. He's going to get work in the red zone. That's it. You put him in as a running back one every week. Is he going to hit every week? No. Is he going to hit most weeks because of the volume? Yeah, you just can't trump volume. That's it. Now, I'm going to say this. I put him at running back 8 because he tends to fall in the end zone every week and because he's going to get 20-something touches. This is a nasty matchup.
Mm-hmm.
The Bears at home. The Bears are no joke. And Matthew Stafford and those boys, I don't know how they got past the 49ers. The 49ers sleptwalked through that game. They took them lightly because of all the injuries. The Bears aren't going to take them lightly. The Bears are going to be in that team's face all day. The Rams might not score 9 points in this game. But again, I'm ranking Kyren Williams high because he has proven no matter what's going on, he's getting the work.
I actually picked the Rams to win that one in my article we posted later today. At the very least, I was like, they're going to cover the 2.5 point spread. I don't know why the Bears are giving points to anybody right now with how bad they have played. And I know their defense is really good. I think Caleb Williams will be good at a certain point, but we need to see it before we start trusting against the Rams, who, despite every single player being injured, performed really well against a good defense last week. So I think the Rams are going to be better offensively than we might be projecting. But if you think they're not going to score 9 points, I would say I don't know if the Bears are going to score more than 10 points either. Like, it might just take the under on that game if that's the case.
I learned something about Caleb Williams, and I predicted him to have a big week last week. First 2 games, if he gets pressure, he's done. He has no chance. Interior line's bad. If a team, like we saw DeMeco Ryans bring 44% blitz against Williams in week 2, and it was done. Last week they played the Colts. I go, the Colts can't rush. Colts can't cover. Colts are screwed. Well, guess what they're getting this week? They're getting the Rams. Rams can't rush. Rams can't cover. Top corners out. They're free safeties on IR. It's the same
I think
thing.
that's not. No, I think Byron Young and Jared Verse are actually pretty
Please,
good
come
rushing.
on, Joe.
We're
Joe.
all
These
right.
are
Here
names.
we go. We're throwing
these
it
are,
out here.
Byron Young, you know what he'll say? Thank you, Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's on triple teams. Anybody rushing across from Aaron Donald looked like Superman because nobody worried about him.
That's
Jared
true.
Verse, he's a kid. He's learning the league. The Bears might be terrible on the interior. The Bears tackles are decent. The Bears don't have tackle issues. They got guard and center issues. At best, it's a neutral matchup. At best for Verse, it's not a good matchup for him. But these young rookies that come in as rushers, occasionally we get one that's immediately a game wrecker. That's not been the case through 3 weeks. Jared Verse has not been a game wrecker. So that said, respectfully disagree on that.
I was going to say, anytime this happens, I'm always on the wrong side of it. So I'll defer to you every single time in those scenarios. You're right. I guess I have a bit more respect for Sean McVay and the Rams, but I'm thinking more will the Rams win or lose. You're thinking like the actual ways in which the Bears win and the actual ways in which the Rams win. I think that's a fair point. Absolutely. So Kyren Williams at running back 8 for you, respecting the volume despite the defense that he'll be going against, I should say, this week against Chicago. We have been waiting, and Chuba Hubbard was one of those guys, especially when we're talking about best ball conversation in May and June. How is Chuba Hubbard in round 11 or 12 not being taken? Jonathan Brooks is going to miss at least a month of the season. And then first it was like, no, Jonathan Brooks will play. And then got that revealed early August that he would be on the PUP list. He would be out for at least the first month of the season. Oh, well, okay, then it's Bryce Young, and that offense really stinks. And that certainly proved to be true. Of course, you probably weren't playing Chuba Hubbard in week 3 because Andy Dalton couldn't possibly look that good to make the whole offense better. Well, enter Antonio Pierce and the Raiders, and Andy Dalton dead cat bounce like we had talked about last week. Do you think Chuba Hubbard is once again a play? Because you're running out of time to get the main guy in the backfield with Jonathan Brooks possibly getting activated off the injured reserve list here in week 5.
You know, I have Chuba Hubbard, my running back 20. Cincinnati, we knew going into the year, their defense against the run was going to be bad. It was bad last year, and they lost DJ Reader. And now they had 2 other, like BJ Hill was out. They were missing other players on the interior. Even if they're there, they're not good against the run. But without Bryce Young, I know Andy Dalton's nothing great. We know what he is. But defense has got to pay a little respect to him. Defense paid no respect to Bryce Young. Basically, you walk everybody up, said, you can't throw the ball, so you don't have a quarterback. So Chuba Hubbard now will get a little space, but the usage is great. Chuba Hubbard in his role, 58% of the snaps, basically, if they need to run him, fine, 21 carries. Oh, we need to throw 5 targets, caught them all last week.
Yep.
He had 5 targets the prior week, even with Bryce Young. So regardless of game script, Chuba Hubbard is somebody who is going to contribute, and use him now because Jonathan Brooks, like you said, probably coming back pretty soon. The expectation is he should come back right off that list. But this matchup, there is nothing to be worried about against the Bengals. Like I said, if it's a shootout blowout, he catches a ton of passes. If it's close, he runs for a lot of yards. This is a great matchup.
I'll play this question out to you because I think it will be one that anyone listening can find applicable. Would you play Chuba Hubbard or like Jawan Jennings or Carson Steele? You think about a couple of guys that are hot waiver wire picks for the past couple of weeks, or Chuba Hubbard, who it would at minimum be in your mind a flex. Like, how much confidence do you have in Chuba Hubbard repeating that over a lot of the other hot streamer options or waiver wire pickups for the past couple of weeks?
Look, Carson Steele had some volume last week. He didn't do much. I don't think he hit 9 PPR points, right? So, I mean, and he had an opportunity, right? And now Kareem Hunt's the active roster. So that takes away 3 or 4 of those carries, maybe more, right? For whatever reason, they're bringing Hunt up. So they're going to give Hunt some work. So I just think it's a mess there. So I'm really off the Carson Steele train. Not that I was on it, but I don't think there's any, like, he's not a pass catcher where Hubbard is. And I think there's an edge there. And the second player you asked about, I'm sorry.
Jawan Jennings, like another one that obviously went insane last week. That's not happening every week. So just another typical waiver wire name from the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be tough with Jawan Jennings because obviously Brandon Ayuk did very little on 10 targets when Jawan Jennings set the world on ablaze. So, I mean,
almost 50 fantasy points in 1 week is nuts. Yeah.
Right. And so to think that happens again, that's a really, really tough draw. I mean, to think that. And look, they're playing New England. New England's not a pushover defense. The Rams, like I said earlier, the Rams have nothing. They can't cover. They can't rush. They can't do much of anything. New England, New England could do a little bit on defense. They have good corners. And matter of fact, if you think about the way it could line up, Christian Gonzalez might more likely be on Jennings than on Ayuk, because stylistically, Ayuk is not a good matchup for Gonzalez. Gonzalez is better against those physical receivers. And if Gonzalez is on Jennings, Jennings might not do a single thing in this game. So I'm going to go very easily with Chuba Hubbard here.
I hadn't really thought about that. The Niners are favored by 10 points, and that was a suspicious line to me already because Niners have dropped the ball in 2 to 3 weeks. You have Deebo Samuel out. There's been injuries. There's just been weirdness, I think, with San Francisco, right? And yet I'm like, no, for sure Niners cover that 10 points because the Patriots offense stinks. We're not talking about the Patriots offense when we're saying fantasy questions for Juwan Jennings. It's what could Christian Gonzalez do? And he's been good against every receiver. That's one of the better cornerbacks in the league as well. I talked about Patrick Surtain and need to get more recognition. I think Christian Gonzalez also needs to, even if the Patriots are a stinky offense overall. I mean, it's true, right, Jim? It's fine. That's
it's true.
I'm not making any crazy statements.
No. I like the word stinky. I thought it was funny. That's why I did that.
One last running back question. It's pertaining to Rico Dowdle, and we were talking about streaming running backs, or if you're in deeper leagues. And again, I'm playing in 16 leagues this year. Bucky Irving was not available in any of them since week 1. We did the waiver wire show and talked about Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings was only available in 1 of my 16. So when I'm tailoring these questions, I'm trying to help out the audience of the larger, deeper leagues, Jim. And Rico Dowdle has seemingly taken over the starting running back spot for the Cowboys. Zeke was pushed out for 2nd consecutive week. And it's a Thursday game, which I think always adds just like the heebie-jeebies for people a little bit. But right. Daniel Jones is 1-7 against the Cowboys. That Cowboys defense always seems to feast. Think about what happened. What was that, week 1 or week 2 of last year where they won 40-0 with all the defensive touchdowns? Do you think there is an opportunity for Rico Dowdle to get a lot of rushing opportunities and therefore become a flex play this week if you need to?
Yeah, he's definitely on the flex radar. I have him as running back 39, and that sounds terrible, but he hasn't seen more than 11 touches in a game. I still think if they get to the goal line, I think Elliott runs the ball in, and there's been some catches there for Dowdle. So Dowdle's fine as long as he is a floor play. You want to get your 6 to 9 PPR points and call it a day. I think you could pretty much safely say 6 to 9 points. And if he somehow does score a touchdown or he gets a couple extra carries, you might get a little bit more. I just don't. And it's a good matchup, good enough matchup. If you run against the middle, Dexter Lawrence is a problem, and so that would be he's one of those game wreckers. He's one of those like 5 players in a league that will just completely flip you. And if the Cowboys do have a weaker interior line, the new center, so it's an issue there. But again, Dowdle's a high floor play, and so you use him for that purpose. But I don't see upside, Joe.
We're 1 more week away from calling the high floor play just the Carson Steele. Like everyone will unanimously understand the high floor play. He's going to get you 8 points and nothing more. That's the Carson Steele. We could just use that from a verbatim perspective. So a good call out, at least for Rico Dowdle on the Cowboys rushing attack. I don't have any Dowdle shares. I don't have any more Zeke shares after this week too. He's been so disappointing to me. So we'll see. Of course, that means the way my fantasy season's gone, Zeke's going to go insane. So I apologize to anyone who is going to be going against Zeke in whatever leagues you might be in that case. So a reminder, at RotoWire, we've got you covered from a fantasy and gambling content perspective for every sport. Obviously, fantasy baseball is effectively done, but we got the postseason coming up. We were doing different articles. I've referenced my gambling article now a number of times. That'll be published on RotoWire probably in the next 4 or 5 hours. JB Fantasy Sports, you can find on my Twitter too. But check out our fantasy content. Obviously, the articles. Jerry Donabinian does one of the best box score breakdowns, all the snap count totals, and what the playing time means per quarter and per situation. I don't think there's any other content out there on the sites that you might be paying subscribers stuff for than what Jerry's article is. Right now, you can see that again. RotoWire.com/try gets you that 2-day trial access to the site, no credit card needed. I think we really, my job is here, my livelihood is here. I've been working nearly 10 years at RotoWire. I'm biased when I say it, but I think we got you covered on every single angle that you could possibly need from a fantasy sports perspective. So RotoWire.com/try. All right, let's get to the receivers. And I know last week you and I had talked about this, and it came to fruition. Skylar Thompson is not a top 64 quarterback in the league. He should not be a backup for anybody. Probably shouldn't be in a practice squad. Maybe I'm being a little bit too mean for a guy that got concussed or injured and might not play this week. But I think it's also convenient out, if that's the case, that maybe the Dolphins don't choose to start Skylar Thompson because he's injured. How would you handle both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle with the assumption Skylar Thompson plays? And are you like me in assuming that he might not be out there come Sunday?
besides Prey. Oh my gosh. And they're talking of Tyler Huntley. And what people need to understand what Tyler Huntley is, his first starting run with the Ravens, he looked great. And then film came out on him. And then when he got another run when Jackson got hurt, all of a sudden the film was out and he couldn't move the offense at all. He was terrible. And so people are having this unrealistic vision of what he is. Maybe he's better than Skylar Thompson. Maybe he's better than Tim Boyle.
He's definitely better than Tim Boyle. We can do that one. We can confidently say that. Jim, you're better than Tim Boyle. I feel absolutely confident you could drop back and throw as many completed passes as Tim Boyle does in a game. Guaranteed.
The point is they're horrible. And so that's the problem, right? I mean, Tyreek Hill, I couldn't put him lower than wide receiver 14 just because he's Tyreek Hill. That if Mike McDaniel says, you know what, I'm going to give you 4 handoffs, then all of a sudden Tyreek Hill could cash for you. And you think Mike McDaniel has to get to that point saying, look, just run jet motion. We're going to hand you the ball and do something. I mean, so I have him at wide receiver 14. So what I'm saying is you can't bench Tyreek Hill because he can make a play out of anything. And so you start him, but you got to diminish your expectations. And Jalen Waddle, I mean, I should have moved him down more. I have him at wide receiver 26. That's wide receiver 3 range. But realistically, I mean, I could see him catching 3 passes for 28 yards and making him the wide receivers 55 or 60. But again, I'm deferring to Mike McDaniel. I think he'd come up with something last week and he didn't. To come up with something this week, just a 3-yard pass, get the ball schemed up into his hands out of motion or something. But you can't confidently play either one of them. But your investment was huge and they're talented. The talent is so good. And so it's one of those things. You trust him as a flex, maybe. Waddle. You trust him as a flex. That's where your expectation is. What do you think, Joe?
I benched Jalen Waddle for Juwan Jennings last week. It was Jaden Reed, Jalen Waddle, and Juwan Jennings. And I confidently put Juwan Jennings in my lineup. I have no idea what Malik Willis is going to do with Jaden Reed again. I have a pretty good idea what Skylar Thompson's going to do for Jalen Waddle. It's not going to be very good. I could guess what Juwan. Now, I wasn't expecting a 50-point fantasy game, right? That's like one of those, you can pat yourself on the back for being stupid. Maybe that's kind of the correct call that I made with that. But I would be benching Jalen Waddle in just about every scenario. Like Michael Wilson in the highest over-under for the week 3 slate. Would you consider Michael Wilson over Jalen Waddle? That's the level I think we have to kind of go to with this question.
Yeah, I really need to move Waddle lower in my rankings. I mean, like I said, he probably needs to be around wide receiver 50. It's Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. You excuse me, you as an analyst, as a person that does this, spends 70 hours a week doing all the research and knowledge and talking about things. You look dumb saying Jalen Waddle should be outside your top 30 receivers because you're drafting him among the top 20 picks, top 24 picks. But it's the situation, and it reminds me a lot of Garrett Wilson last year to a lesser extent. Zach Wilson was a bad quarterback. He would put situations in for the Jets to lose the football game, but he would at least throw to his best receiver. I don't think there's any quarterback in the Dolphins that can confidently throw to their second best receiver. That's why Tyreek Hill, where you have him in your rankings, you have to do that. I understand. But Jalen Waddle, I think, is way, way lower for me as well, too. And one of those that I would be trying desperately to find better options to play until Tua comes back, if Tua comes back. Yeah, go ahead.
So quick, we had a question in here, and I want to point. I want to just teach the fantasy community something here, if I could say it that way, and not sound arrogant because I'm not being arrogant here. Uncle Ted, great follower to show love. Uncle Ted, he's always with us. He always has great contributions. Talks about Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker had a massive game last week. There's no doubt. What you need to understand, and this is the fantasy thing of chasing box scores. Trey Tucker had more yardage than Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers combined. Jacoby Myers also went off in that game. At best, Trey Tucker is the 4th option in a passing game, led by either Gardner Minshew for now or probably Aiden O'Connell soon. There are not 11 target games in the future for Trey Tucker. It was a weird game against the Panthers. The targets are going to Bowers, they're going to Adams, and there's nothing left over for anyone else most weeks. Tucker is their 3rd receiver, but their 4th option. Now, if you're in a 14-team league and you're looking at, a bye week 3rd flex or something where you're really, really, really deep in the roster spots, yes. But the odds of Trey Tucker having 3 usable games this year are less than 5%.
Yeah, you've already burned through one of them, if that's the case, right? Like if we had 3, we already had one last week. Jim, what I hear is you're going into business for yourself, right? Like you're making a business decision, as Antonio Pierce has said. The only scenario in which Uncle Ted, I think, is correct in Trey Tucker rest of the season is if Antonio Pierce gets his way and Devontae Adams gets his way and he goes to New York, right? Like that's the only way in which I'd be comfortable saying, yeah, go get Trey Tucker. And this was a bad waiver wire week. Like we did the show again Tuesday. And I literally just kept saying for the 30 minutes, you could play back the last week's show, and it's the same concepts. Juwan Jennings, it's Bucky Irving, it's Cordell Patterson was like our big waiver wire difference this week, or Brenton Strange. Woohoo, a lot of great options. So I'm fine rolling the dice on Trey Tucker, but the concept of you need to go out and get him, or like he's the guy this week, I agree with you. It was a weird game, and maybe Antonio Pierce is going to have weird games because he's kind of a weird coach. But I'm not like using my fantasy analyst table to stand on and say, get him, weird, does weird stuff, go. Like that's not how it goes. And I appreciate you making that call. I had said last week that between Chris Godwin and Trey McBride, those are 2 players that I will be trying to buy at cost, if not higher, rest of season. Like you could pay whatever you want for Chris Godwin. I don't think you're losing, right? That was the concept. Of course, Trey McBride gets injured. That's me. I will take the fault on that one, touting Trey McBride as much as I did. I will repeat that question again and possibly give more bad juju. Rashee Rice has to be in that equation. Like there isn't a thing or player or trade that I'd say, oh yeah, that looks bad now if you're trying to acquire Rashee Rice. We talked about Patrick Mahomes, that Chiefs offense looking as dismal as it has. Rashee Rice has been excellent. And more importantly, I think you put on the film, he looks like a ball player. He looks like he makes a difference maker when the ball in his hands. And that's one of those I just want to have as many shares as I can.
Yeah, Rashee Rice, I have him as the wide receiver 6 this week. I can make a case of moving him ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown for the wide receiver 5 for sure. But Rashee Rice is their passing game right now for Patrick. He is what they have. Kelsey, obviously, he's not getting anything done. The ancillary receivers are very, very deep. Few target options, but Rice is commanding looks. 14 targets last week, 9 in the opener, only had 6 in the second week. But again, the production has been there every week. Clearly has Andy Reid dialing him up for plays. Patrick Mahomes, it's his go-to receiver. And even though Mahomes has not been a fantasy starting level quarterback, he's supporting one receiver. That's the only receiver they have going. Xavier Worthy has 34 yards receiving over the last 2 games. That's it.
Shocker.
Right?
Shocker. If you would have listened to either one of us, we've been telling that all year, but that's fine. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great week 1. Cool.
Oh man, after the opener, man, people got really excited. Mm-hmm. And I keep saying that opening game, the one touchdown was a perfectly blocked reverse. Nobody touched him. Yep. The speed was insane. Love his speed. The touchdown was Marlon Humphrey passed him off to nobody at all.
You could have caught that touchdown, literally. I mean, like I know I've been using that too much. Either one of us could have absolutely scored that second touchdown.
Mahomes took an extra nanosecond to throw the ball because it was almost like, is he really this far open? Okay, we'll take the 6 points. It was great. But yeah, the last 2 weeks has been what we expected. 4 targets in each game, 2 of 17 in each game. He did run for 13 yards last week, but he's a clear the field out guy. And it's not even really doing that because the yards per attempt, we said earlier in the show for Mahomes, I think it's 4.4. And his 7 was his career low by a full yard last year. This is like almost half of what his career norms were. So it's ugly, but Rashee Rice, yeah, rest of season, high wide receiver 1. He's not in the Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson bucket, but he's in that next bucket of players.
I know you could probably think of a better answer for this, but if I was asked who's been the biggest disappointment through 3 weeks, and not including players injured or situations like Jalen Waddle, for example, where it's clearly the quarterback injured, that's you weren't anticipating that, therefore you would have drafted Waddle lower. I would say it's probably Michael Pittman, right? Like Richardson has been playing like he's injured. It's been awful right through the first 3 weeks of the season, but I have confidence that Shane Steichen was going to be one of the better offensive coordinators. You had Jonathan Taylor healthy. The Colts overall offensively has not been good, but I think Michael Pittman has been one of the bigger disappointments of fantasy outside the tight end position, which we'll get to in a second, just overall bad. What do you do with Michael Pittman? We could do the weekly ranking, but like rest of season, how are you operating with Michael Pittman if you have him?
I mean, Pittman, again, I put him as my wide receiver 31 because he gets 8. Yeah, well, he had 5 last week. He gets about 7 or 8 targets most weeks. He gets about 4 catches. He gets about 30 yards. But he needs to go lower, too. He needs to go lower. I need to move him into the mid-40s. I need to move him down. but I put him as low as 31 seemed low for him because he's their technically alpha receiver. But Anthony Richardson, look, he has great downfield passing ability. We kind of knew he was sketchy in the short and intermediate area of the field, but we thought having a big target like Pittman would equate to easy pitch and catch and some easy opportunities. That hasn't happened. Richardson is not playing at an NFL level right now. When the deep passes hit, it looks beautiful. He has 3 touchdown passes and 6 interceptions so far. That's not cutting. And he's not running either. But Pittman is not getting anything going because, like I said, Richardson is really struggling on the short and intermediate area. So I'm going to move Pittman down my rankings actually after the show. And I have to get that done. But I've got to put him like at 45 or 48 because I just don't know if there's any upside here. 3 games, matchups have not been oppressive, and Pittman has just not gotten anything going. Not his fault. He's just in with a quarterback that's not a good mesh for his skill set. Not saying Richardson can't figure it out, turn it around or something like this. But right now, it's not looking good at all.
Yeah, and like Gardner Minshew did last year, Pittman got over 100 catches or whatever it was. And even with Josh Downs too, that was the other part of why I was concerned and was one of the players I had recommended I'm fading this week was Josh Downs comes back, Michael Pittman becomes even less for the opportunities for Pittman to just get like safe, secure our Carson Steele floor, right? We're going to keep calling it that, the 8 points. It's because you can catch those intermediate slants for 8 yards. Well, Josh Downs already been doing that. He comes back for his first week, is acclimated into the offense, but not to the extent that you expect for future weeks. I couldn't sell Michael Pittman faster or lower. Like I don't know the correct verbiage for it, but I'm very concerned. I don't think the situation changes at all. I don't know if Michael Pittman name brand value is going to matter by week 7 or 8. Like that's maybe something you could see in the waiver wire is maybe a bit intense of a statement, but it's tough, I think, right now. That's that Colts passing attack. So I'm seeing some start and sit questions in the chat. Again, Jim, you're going to be covering that, it feels like, for 15 hours on Sunday. I know it's actually a 2-hour show, but you're doing the start sit stuff on the RotoWire YouTube channel. Again, if you're watching this live, thank you. It'd be great if you hit that like button. But also a reminder that we do have a picks and props app on RotoWire right now. We're partnered with Underdog. If you want to take the higher or lower on Patrick Mahomes' half-point passing yard total, you can do that on the Underdog app and also use our picks and prop tool. We got you covered like BetMGM and more of that stuff as well too. It's free to download on the Apple and Android store. Sign up within the app for a subscription to unlock all the features. And existing rotowire.com/DFS pick subscribers get instant access to that with their login. So check it out now. Search RotoWire Picks in the App Store today. I have only one question for you, Jim. I'm sure you've had this a million times before. What do you do with the tight end position overall in fantasy? We can shrug our shoulders. People are going to ask us, hey, do I play this guy or that guy? And I know the answer is, I don't know. I mean, like, that's at least how I feel like I can answer it. You're probably smarter and better at it than answering me. But overall, fantasy tight end position, what are we doing?
Across the league, we're not seeing a dominant tight end. Brock Bowers had 2 good games, came back a little bit to earth last week. Jake Ferguson had a good game, but we haven't had big games from many of the tight ends. I mean, Dallas Goedert went off last week, 60-yard catch on the sideline. Great pick play on that, by the way. But there haven't been any type of realistic consistency. I really believe, we mentioned it earlier in the show, defense is in the chess game this year and how players are dropping into coverage, that simulated pressure. Some players you don't expect to rush are rushing. Other players are dropping into coverage. I really think that defenses are dropping people into the typical tight end areas of the field. I think it's a point of emphasis throughout the league. And I think the looks to the tight ends are not what they've been in the past. There are a lot of automatic, easy sit-down routes and zones that they used to run or seam routes they used to run. I think defense are making a concerted effort to get after that. I do think as teams get into their bye weeks, we could see some teams beginning to utilize these multifaceted tight ends in better ways. I think the antidote's going to be get them like they used to do with Dallas Goedert. We put them on one side, the 3 receivers on the other. I think if you put some of them in isolation, because some of these tight ends are too good to ignore, you want them to be a focal point of your offense. But until we start seeing different usage than the traditional usage we've had from most of these players, I think we're going to continue to see a low production tight end season.
Yeah, I mean, whether it be we had people in the chat about Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, all the injured guys like David Njoku, Evan Ingram, Jake Ferguson missed a game. And like there literally is no spot in your top 16 ADP wise besides Brock Bowers that hasn't been affected in some way. And it's like, okay, great. If Brock Bowers is your last man standing, we're still talking about Antonio Pierce and the Raiders of all teams that we're trying to trust. It's just a wasteland. The joke around the office has been forget getting out of leagues that have kickers. Let's get out of leagues that have tight ends. Let's just make another flex spot, whatever. And like, it's an overreaction, but man, it's been frustrating, especially if you're highly investing in some of these tight ends.
So you mentioned the tight end position. You mentioned Mark Andrews' name, and I do want to make a final point here about the Ravens specifically. In week 1, we saw Isaiah Likely go off 9 for $111 and a touchdown, 12 targets. And I said on multiple shows, if the Ravens keep using Isaiah Likely as a receiver and him and Mark Andrews are playing on the field, the Ravens season is over because they had no blocking. They're an offensive line, 3 new players. You put 2 pass catching tight ends on the field, and we saw Derrick Henry had no room to run. He called Rashad Bateman a deep threat if you want. He's not. No defense respects his speed for any reason at all. So what happens here is, I said the Ravens are going to come to a break point real soon. John Harbaugh is going to see this is going on, and he's either going to say, I need blocking. Well, he played Patrick Ricard only 24% of the snaps first 2 weeks. Last week, it went up into the 50s. And guess what happened? Derrick Henry ran all day long. They only had to throw 15 passes. I know he played Dallas. I know Dallas is terrible against the run, but they finally found an identity. Well, Mark Andrews played 33% of the snaps, while Likely played 62. And Charlie Kohler, the third tight end, played 41% of the snaps, and he outperformed both Likely and Andrews because he caught a 30-yard pass. So right now, this is a team in transition. The tight ends, again, neither of them have done much since week 1. Andrews had a 50-yard game in week 2, and we were excited. But I don't think there's going to be consistency to that. Here's the if. Hold on to Andrews if you can, because once the running game gets going, play action's back on the table. And when play action's on the table, Andrews is your seam stretcher. So if they use that would definitely work with Todd Monken wants to do. But I don't think we're going to see that for a couple more weeks, because they have to establish this run game for a few weeks to prove to opponents they're really going to do it.
Yeah, it's been tough in the Mark Andrews situation. And again, Travis Kelce, you're in the same boat. I traded for Trey McBride last week. I don't know if he's going to play this week. Sam Laporta got carted off, it felt like 15 times in their win last week. It was only one time, I know, but the stats of the Sam Laporta, and you can go down the line. I said David Njoku, Evan Ingram, the one person that chats about Brock Bowers. That's literally the last man standing of the top 12 tight ends that were drafted. Like, great, you won by default. Like, it's a really, really tough spot to be. And good luck guessing on Hunter Henry, who was the hot waiver wire pickup last week. Didn't do anything against the Jets. Could you think that will happen to Cole Kmet? I don't know. As a Packer fan, I would like that. Yes, please have the Bears offense look bad, but it's just a tough spot to be in right now. And I don't know if there's any other answer to the, do I start X tight end or X tight end other than hopefully maybe they'll look great. It's not a great spot to be if you're an analyst like you or I. So any other last words before we sign off here, Jim?
No, like I said, patience is tough in fantasy football. The offenses are going to catch up at some point. And if you begin, we'll talk about this a week, because if you begin to see defense is starting to figure things out, it'll be quick time to buy the players who had slow starts, because those things should turn around. The league doesn't take a full year to make these adjustments, because the offenses cannot continue to exist like this. There will be some changes. But again, when you begin to see them, start buying up those underperforming players.
Bye weeks start next week, so I'm sure the rankings will be a little bit different. The strategy involved with that. Maybe teams will have different offenses with additional time off. I'm trying to talk myself positively into these scenarios, but that does it for us on this edition of Jim's Weekly Rankings. Obviously, back again next Wednesday, same time. Again, if you can like and subscribe to the channel, it'd be awesome. If you want to get any of these start sit questions answered, Jim's got you covered all Sunday morning long. I'm around for my gambling article on JB Fantasy Sports as well on Twitter too. But thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back in next week.